A lot of the issues that we are seeing in our society today started in education in America. Do you know how many hours they spend on teaching math when teaching a teacher how to teach in American schools? Less than 14 hours of math instruction. Yep. How many hours do you think we spent on critical race theory, anti-racist theory, dozens and dozens, feminist theory, and all of these other theories? Yeah. If you're interested in American education, pick up Thomas Sowell's book from 24 years ago. You will be in shock. America won't be taken down through bullets and tanks. America would be taken down through bad ideology and the attack on our values here. The first line of attack were actually the classrooms in America. This Marxist ideology that the job of an educator is to actually produce a student activist who will make the world a better place. Who can teach a child how to make the world a better place? Not the parent, not the pastor, but the teacher. You go to colleges. Many of the colleges are anti-American. Many of the colleges teach you to be selfish, sadly. You are not taught to serve our country. I wish more Americans served in our country here in the United States. At least it plants some seeds of patriotism.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Real Talk with Zuby. On today's episode, I have got on a very special guest. She is the CEO and Chief Troublemaker at PragerU. And this is Marissa Streit. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for getting my title right. I like it.
Awesome. Marissa, first of all, how are you doing?
Thank God. Blessed.
Yeah. What's been going on? What's new?
It just seems like the world seems to get more and more insane for those who are paying attention. And in some ways, it seems like the obvious things that we should have been doing for a long time are becoming even more obvious, like read the Bible, build a family, spend time with people that you love, don't participate in confirmation bias, etc. Like all these things that we've been hearing from our parents and our great-great-grandparents all seem to be true. So I think that on a grand scale, humanity remains pretty consistent.
Awesome. Marissa, when I was thinking of what I wanted to talk to you about, I realized that I don't know that much about your life. And so I wanted to kind of take it from the top and learn about your journey to being where you are now. I didn't want to just talk about all the crazy things going on in the world. We can surely get onto that. But I'm curious to know about your life. So tell me about your childhood. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? And how did you ultimately end up in this world?
Yeah. So really ask me anything, my weight, my height, anything. I'm happy to share. I have an interesting past, and I think it is also what has led me in some interesting ways to build PragerU, become the CEO of PragerU. And my story is this. I was born here in the United States in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. My father's from Australia, and my mother is from Morocco. And so they would call me a Moroccan kangaroo growing up. And that's when the name calling began, I guess. And born in the States, when I was about 7 years old, my mom and I moved to Israel. My parents divorced, and my mom was Jewish, and she was really overwhelmed by the idea of being a single mom and raising me here in Los Angeles. And so we moved to Israel. And I was a latchkey kid. My mom had to work full time. And so all of those hard things that I had to do built my character. And I actually use this term kind of like kiss your calluses, right? Like these really, really hard things. I look back and I say, oh my gosh, maybe thank God I went through that because it built me for the life that I've chosen to live today. Mm-hmm. And
can you give an example of some of those things?
One example is Dad wasn't around.
Yeah.
Another example was that I was an American kid in the Middle East, in Israel. Hebrew was not my first language. English was my first language. My entire family was still living in the United States, aside from my mom's family, who was originally from there, but I just got to know them as I was living there. But when I first arrived, they put me in public school. Everybody spoke Hebrew. My mannerism was American. My language was English. My father was still back in the United States. And so I kind of had to figure out how to survive, how to learn a new culture, how to make new friends, how to advocate for myself when I felt that I was different. I think that many kids, when they go through their teenage years or even prepubescent years, have a really hard time with being very different. Where I actually learned how to embrace it and live with it. I think now when I look back, knowing that as a child, I had to be okay with being the American kid at school, the kid that has family in the United States, the kid that dressed a little differently and had American mannerism. It taught me to be okay with being different. It taught me to be okay with not participating in confirmation bias. And frankly, it gave me bravery because it takes some bravery for a child to walk into school every day and say, yeah, I'm different. So
which part of Israel were you in?
I was in the center, Herzliya.
Okay.
Yeah. So there were American kids, and Israel has people from all over the world. So being different in Israel is not necessarily so unique. They are constantly, bringing in immigrants. My name, Marissa, can't be pronounced easily in Hebrew. And so they would make fun of me. They would call me Marussia, which in Hebrew means from Russia.
Oh, okay.
And I wasn't from Russia. I was from the States. But I kind of learned how to deal with it. I just toughened up.
Yeah. And so what was Israel like at that time?
So at the time that we moved to Israel, there was a big Russian immigration of Jews, and there was an Ethiopian immigration. And so there were waves of immigration, which is always tough when you have large waves of immigration, right? Integration and a lot of, again, with kids being different is really, really hard. And so I actually didn't fit in with the Russians because I wasn't Russian. I didn't fit in with the Ethiopians, but I wasn't Israeli. And so I remember that being an interesting experience. I couldn't figure out whether I was a shy kid or not a shy kid because on the one hand, I had a strong personality and I kind of felt like I knew who I was. On the other hand, the cultural and language barriers in the beginning were something that I had to kind of get used to. And then I think as I got older, I discovered that I was maybe kind of cute. And so I got attention from the guys. And so I usually hung out with guys. And in general, maybe I had some male energy in me. I'm very feminine and I'm certainly not a feminist. We can talk about this later. But I always felt really good hanging out with guys. And so I had a lot of guy friends. I also didn't have a father around. And so I think that hanging out with guy friends gave me that male energy that I didn't have coming in from my dad now that I think about it as I'm older. And childhood in Israel was a lot of fun. I had a lot of freedom. Contrary to what I think people learn about Israel, it's not all, bombs and violence all the time. Kids have a lot of freedom over there. I would, take the bus and I would walk and I would kind of arrange my own schedule. And that also gave me that kind of entrepreneurial, independent spirit that I have. When I was about 16 years old, I received an envelope from the Israeli military. I later discovered that the schools in Israel communicate with the Israeli military about kids' aptitudes.
Okay.
And so I did fairly well in school, pretty well in school. I was kind of like in a gifted class. And I was summoned to get tested. And for about 2 years, I continued to go in for testing. Eventually, they figured out what to do with me.
What kind of testing?
A lot of it was logic. I remember going into this large room with tiny little pencils, and there was like logic questions, like the ones that are fun for geeks like me to do still today online, where like, can you figure out why this box and this box look the same from a certain angle, right? So it was things like that. Interviews, they interviewed me. They got to know my character, I think, a little through that. And then when I was 18 years old, on my actual birthday, I was summoned to serve in the Israeli military.
Okay.
And I served in an intelligence unit, 8200, was a small unit where they trained us. We studied a little bit about the Middle East. The truth is, they taught us on a macro scale what where Israel is in comparison to its neighbors, and they taught us what information they wanted us to find. They've never taught us why we need to look for it, right? That we all were only allowed to know very little, probably for our safety. So I did that. I served in the Israeli military for about 2 years. I think that mostly what they wanted to teach us in our training was discernment, like how to look for something that seems off. And I think that was a gift for me as an entrepreneur and as a CEO, because if you run a business, the best thing that you can do for your business is to constantly pay attention and have discernment and have a sense of, well, how can I see around double corners? Like, what could happen? What could go wrong? So it makes me an annoying wife because I come home and I'm like, babe, I think something can go wrong. All right. Like this looks inefficient. Right. Yeah. No, we can talk about what males want and don't want. I am sure they don't want a person who comes in and operationalize the household and find issues. Okay. But I think that's the troublemaker in me, right? It's like that I see around corners. And I think that that's either what the Israeli military saw in me when they recruited me, or what my training taught me to think through, right? Like what could go wrong? Israel is a country that's constantly under threat. And there are many neighbors that sometimes are friendly and sometimes are not friendly. And there's a lot of confusion around there. And so the ability to just see when there is an aberration, something could go wrong, and then be able to kind of raise your hand and say, I'm seeing something seems off. Yeah. And so I served in the Israeli military for 2 years. Interestingly, I was always honest with everybody around me, including with myself, that I'm an American and I'm going to come back to the United States. And so I was living in Israel at the time, and my duty at the time while living there was to serve in the Israeli military. And so if you're living in Israel and you're a citizen of Israel and you go to high school there, you are mandated to serve in the Israeli military. And I lived there, and that was what I was summoned to do, and I did that. And upon completion, I came back to the United States, which I always knew I would, and that's when I continued my life here.
Thanks for watching this video. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more full Real Talk with Zuby podcasts and clips. Thank you.
There's a couple interesting directions we can go, but first of all, I'm curious about the sort of military mandate. Is that something that you think more countries should do? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
Okay.
I wish more Americans served in our country here in the United States. There are a few things. Number one is when you're 18 years old, it's really hard to know what you're going to want to do with the rest of your life. The other part of it is our colleges, to say that they're not structured is an understatement. I actually think they create chaos in a child's brain oftentimes. They teach upside down ideas, and many of them are Marxists, and so they teach anti-Americanism. I think that if Americans served in the American military, as Israelis do in the Israeli military, at least it plants some seeds of patriotism, because when you serve, you learn to appreciate and love. Think about, you're now a father. You serve your child every single day. When you serve your child, your wife, you love them more. It's a human instinct to do so. When you wake up every single day for a while and you serve your country, it's not that you claim that your country is perfect, but you do the act of love. It's the act of love that leads to also the emotion of love. And I think that when we have an individualistic society like we do here in the United States, you go to colleges. Many of the colleges are anti-American. Many of the colleges teach you to be selfish, sadly. You are not taught to serve our country. And so from a societal perspective, I think that America would benefit from Americans serving in the military. And then from a personal perspective, right, you're still kind of lost when you're 18 years old. You don't really know what you're going to want to do. Getting the visibility that you can get through military, right? It teaches discipline. It forces you to do hard things. I mean, I had to clean bathrooms. I had to physically do hard things. Physically doing hard things is incredibly important, especially when you're 18 years old, right? You're sleeping less hours, you're lifting more weights, maybe you're running in the rain. Imagine what that does to a character of an 18-year-old kid, as opposed to going to college and just drinking and hanging out with friends. And so I think serving in the military helps on a societal and national level, but I also think it helps on a personal level, maturing, resilience, all of those things that really a young person should go through before they embark into the real world. A lot of it you can get from military. I'm not saying that everybody has had a perfect military experience, but I would say that overall it's a really good thing.
Yeah. What was it like coming back to the USA? And did you come straight back to LA or go somewhere else?
So, upon completion of my service, I came back to the United States. It was, I honestly, I could get emotion about this. I knew I came home. I just knew there are some things that you feel in your heart and in your soul that are just right for you. And we could talk about this more, but I've always been very tuned into myself. Like when I eat something, I can just tell when something's not the right fit for my body. When I spend time around people who are not the right energy for me, I have that discernment of, wait, that person's not right for me. And when I came home to the United States, I just knew I was here to stay. I knew I was going to meet my husband here. I knew I was going to raise my kids here. I just knew. And I think it's also why I felt so strongly that whatever it is that I learned in Israel, when I enlisted there, I felt like I had to enlist here in America.
And did you?
So I didn't enlist in the military. At that point, I was older. I enlisted in education. And I realized very early on in education that America won't be taken down through bullets and tanks. America would be taken down through bad ideology and the attack on our values here. And so I enlisted in education. And, Zuby, to be honest, like my parents were in shock.
When you say you enlisted in education, what do you mean exactly by that?
I got a degree in education. I taught K through 8th grade in the belly of the beast, Los Angeles. I later on ran a school. I completely immersed myself in American ideas and ideology. And I committed myself to the future of America by serving children, by serving, these arrows that we shoot into the future. It was that commitment that I wanted to make because I realized that this country needed us to support her because she's going to be attacked because she's the greatest. The greatest gets attacked.
What was it you saw in the world of education that made you come to the realization of what you just said, of America won't be brought down via, military action, but it's going to be ideological, an attack on the values? What was it that you saw that made you even think that way?
So first of all, the attack on merit. I think the attack on merit is an attack on America. Because America is a country that basically says we're all equal because we have the same starting point. Now, the same starting point as in like we all have the same wealth? No, we don't have the same wealth, but we all have the same equal opportunity. If we truly live true to the Constitution, which we didn't always, right? We went through Jim Crow and there was anti-Semitism in America too, but when I was growing up here and going through getting my master's in education, the great 80s and 90s here, we had equal opportunity. And I saw that through this world of education, we were teaching young people that we don't have equal opportunity and we don't even want equal opportunity. We want equal results. Now, you can't have both, right?
So you saw this in
education. It all started in education. In the 90s. It all started this concept of critical race theory or equity, or let's not worry about equal opportunity. Let's focus on equal results. All of these terrible ideas started in education. The first line of attack were actually the classrooms in America. this Marxist ideology that your merit doesn't matter, but the color of your skin matters. Like I remember, being told that I should treat students differently based on the color of their skin.
Really?
And I would say, what? Are you kidding me?
I think people wouldn't be surprised to hear that now, but would be surprised to hear that was going on decades ago.
Pick up the book. If you're interested in American education, pick up Thomas Sowell's book from 24 years ago.
Which one?
Inside American Education. It's pretty thick. You will be in shock. You will be in shock that it wasn't written 2 years ago.
Yeah.
A lot of the issues that we are seeing in our society today started in education in America. So it started in the colleges. It specifically started in the colleges of education. So the colleges of education are the most vulnerable one. So you would have professors who would teach teachers, and the teachers would go into the classrooms, and they were the head of the snakes. So when you talk about Marxist education, the disbelief that merit actually matters, critical race theory, generative education. Generative education is a very interesting thing.
What does that mean?
So generative education basically means that, let's say I'm teaching your son math. Well, I shouldn't just teach him math. While teaching him math, I should teach him about the culture so he can become an advocate for a better world. And so sounds very nice and everything, except if what you believe a better world is a world that doesn't support merit. If you believe that you should teach everything through an anti-racist lens, and you should teach that while teaching math, then your lesson plan will be, okay, well, Zuby, you're going to take your child to Disneyland, and you're going to drive from your home to Disneyland. And so how long would it take? And what kind of car do you have? And what kind of safety do you have because of what kind of car do you have? And so as you're calculating the number of hours that take you to get from your home to Disneyland, you also have to calculate the hardship that your family is going to go through in going from your home to Disneyland because of the color of your skin and because of your last name.
Oh, wow.
So let's children, as we calculate the math and how much gasoline you need, let's also calculate, well, can this family even afford gasoline? Oh, can this family even go to Disneyland? Will they even feel comfortable going to Disneyland?
Seems
you see,
quite distracting
so
from the math.
you generate a conversation, a cultural conversation, because ultimately what we were taught in education schools is not necessarily to teach math only, but to also generate a student activist, a kid who is actually going to make the world a better place. And, who can teach a child how to make the world a better place? Not the parent, not the pastor, but the teacher. And that's what you were taught. Do you know how many hours per week they spend on teaching math when teaching a teacher how to teach in American schools?
I'd guess about 2.
1 per week.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, you take an entire year in education school, less than 14 hours of math instruction.
Yep.
How many hours do you think we spent on critical race theory, anti-racist theory, basically subsidiaries of Marxist theory?
Dozens, if not
dozens
hundreds.
And dozens.
Yeah.
Feminist theory and all of these other theories.
Yeah.
And so the schools have created Marxist advocates, essentially. And I started seeing that. I mostly noticed it when I realized that you could not fire a bad teacher, but you could fire a bad plumber, because the teachers were protected by the behemoths of the teachers' unions. And so the teachers could do the most egregious things, but they also could be just completely incompetent in front of a classroom, which is quite egregious if you think about it, because you're sending your children to a class and they can get fired. And that was when I started realizing also that the attack is real.
What are the origins of how that mentality was implanted in the US? I mean, is this going back to like the Frankfurt School people, or like how it can't start in the 90s because it's already gotten a foothold across all of these institutions by then. So how did it even come to be that in the country of the USA, which isn't some, sort of communist haven historically or something like that. How did those ideas take such a firm root?
Yeah.
Do you know the history there?
Yeah. So, I think there are multiple things.
Okay.
Number one is there is a communist agenda to go after America. There's always been, right? Maybe the Cold War ended, but nobody believes that there isn't a communist attempt to spread across the world still and into the United States. And so, you can look up a document that was written in 1958 and translated in the early 60s by Leon Skousen, who listed a bunch of ways where it's the communist agenda was going to infiltrate into American society. And more than half of those points actually talk about education. Some of it also talks about the breaking of the family, which is a typical communist action. A lot of it talks about the destruction of art and beauty, which is another very typical action that is done by communists. And more than half of those points are to basically take over our educational institutions. There has also been a Brazilian influencer who somehow became a fascination of administrators of colleges in the United States, specifically teacher colleges. Paulo Freire, he, for some strange reason, and maybe a nefarious reason, maybe he was supported, became incredibly influential on American universities, specifically in teacher colleges.
Okay.
And his what Pablo's main statement was, it was that the job of an educator is to actually produce a student activist who will make the world a better place. And so what Pablo said was, you know what? You don't need to worry about math and literacy, and ultimately they're going to learn all these things anyway. But the real opportunity here is to shape a child's mind, and to shape a child's mind to become more progressive and to be a student activist and then a lifelong activist through these schools. And that ideology penetrated into the schools and through the teacher colleges into the K through 12th grade schools.
Do you know what decade this guy was? I haven't heard of him before. So do you know what decade
I would probably say that it became more and more popular in the 70s and in the 80s.
Okay.
And at first it was fringe. And then, like many of the academic things that we see, they became more and more mainstream.
Yeah.
And so it was a perfect storm. And I would say that what really lit a fire to the storm and the radicalization of American schools, and when I say radicalization is just a very, very sharp left turn, not even a middle left turn, was when the teachers' unions, there are two major teacher unions in America. One is the American Federation of Teachers. It has about 2.7 million members. And the other one is the National Educators Assembly, the NEA, also over 2 million members. When those teachers' unions got a lot of power with the establishment of the Department of Education. And so those teachers' unions were not nearly as powerful before we had a Department of Education in the United States, which, by the way, a Department of Education that is federally mandated. It shouldn't be a federal mandate, but they made it a federal mandate, and it's through Jimmy Carter, that is quite unique to the United States of America. Most other countries do not have a Department of Education, but America made a political deal. So Jimmy Carter was running for office, and he realized that he needed to get votes. And one great way to get a lot of votes very quickly is to get union members to support him. The teachers' unions, the NEA in particular, made a deal with Jimmy Carter. And they basically said, look, we will get our teachers behind you. They will know all about you. They will realize that you're a pro-teacher president. And in return, we want a Department of Education. Because up until now, nobody wanted a Department of Education in America, up until that point. And Jimmy Carter took the deal, and the NEA supported him. He got elected, and the Department of Education was established. Ronald Reagan tried to abolish the Department of Education, but at that point, they became so big and so powerful because it was an engine where you had an outside group helping get politicians elected, while you had politicians from the outside support these groups, right? And so they created this perfect circle. And then with the teachers' unions, who up until recent years mandated in many states that any teacher that teaches in a government school has to pay dues to the teachers' unions, right? But not until, less than 10 years ago was this made illegal to force a teacher to become part of the teachers union, which was ridiculous. If you think about it, teachers were actually, when I was a teacher, we were forced to pay union dues. You couldn't get out of it. And so imagine this, you have teachers who work for the government forced to pay money into the teachers union, and the teachers union making promises to elected officials that they would get support from the teachers, and the teachers would then go ahead and vote for them. And they just created this insane cycle. And so when you ask, when did the American classroom become incredibly politicized? Yeah. And when did it become so bold? That was around the time of Jimmy Carter.
Well, I've definitely learned some new stuff. It's fascinating, because I often hear, people saying like America is being attacked from the outside, and, there's this influence that's Marxism or communism or this and this. And it's interesting to me because so much of the destruction is internal, even if there is outside influence of this person or that person, has this idea, which is, seeped into the system somehow. The people who propagate it and promote it and fund it and teach it, it seems to primarily be homegrown. It doesn't seem to be, yes, I'm sure that in the Chinese government and Russian government, I'm sure they have like influences and tentacles influencing things in the USA and elsewhere. But the majority of the foot soldiers and the people pushing it and promoting it, I'm like, those are Americans doing that.
Yes.
So that's the part that kind of confuses me. I think people always want to be able to point the finger outside and say, oh, it's, those pesky Russians are meddling, the Chinese are meddling or something. But I'm like, I'm sure there might be some small element of that, but I don't think on a scale of a country of 350 million people or whatever it is, with all of these different states and different power structures, like a lot of this seems to be self-inflicted wounds.
Yeah, so I think your observation is very accurate. Yeah. I mean, certainly, do I think the Chinese or any of our adversaries regret that we are self-inflicting these issues on ourselves? No, I'm sure they don't lament over that. I'm sure they take advantage of it. Sure. Do I think that they regret that we have porous borders and we allow for it for silly political reasons that certainly don't help us as Americans, as a nation? I'm sure that they take advantage of it by, pouring in Chinese nationals and et cetera in through our porous borders. Yeah. But ultimately, you're right. America is a country of, 330 million plus citizens.
I say 350.
Maybe 350.
I feel like people have been saying 330 for like 20 years. I'm like, it's gone.
Yeah, we must have grown. I don't know, birth rate, whatever. But you're right. I mean, over 300 million. And I travel to Europe. I'm like, oh my God, you're only 10 million. You're the tiniest little country. You're so
go to
cute.
Iceland. Iceland's
you're smaller
like 300,000.
than Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
And so I agree. I mean, we are a massive country with massive economic power. Mm-hmm. We have the best military in the world. And how could we self-inflict? I completely agree, which is really why I believe, as an American citizen who is incredibly passionate about my country, I believe the most important area to enlist is education. Because again, look, do I think it's important that America has a strong military? Of course I do. But I just see that the attack is on our children. It's on our future through our children. Right? But like Ronald Reagan said, we're only one generation away from extinction. And it is through the inculcation of what we provide our children with. And so that is what keeps me up at night. That's what worries me as I raise my kids here. What are we teaching our kids? Are we teaching them to survive, to defend, to build families, to find happiness? Are we teaching them all these things that will allow America to remain, in some ways, a modern day empire? Like study Rome. So many of the things that have caused Rome to fall are things that we are doing as Americans. By the way, including the transgenderism stuff and
Yeah,
the sexual aberrations.
yeah, it's not the first time it's happened.
Right? Rome has done that,
Yeah.
right? And then I study that, and I study what we're teaching our kids today through these universities. And how can you not feel like the way to enlist in defending America is through education and through protecting children and through waking the parents up who really should be on the front line of defending children.
Yeah. I think there's a massive question that's kind of going on all throughout the West now of like, how can a society or a nation, maybe I think about this a lot in my weird brain, like, how can you achieve success without becoming a victim of it?
Mm-hmm.
Like when I think of the problems that exist in the first world, or I think of the problems that exist in the West, where it could be USA, Canada, the UK, and I look at the problems, so many of them are, the issues are often downstream of abundance.
Yes.
So through most of human history and still to this day in most of the world, the problems are problems of lack.
Yeah.
So obviously there just aren't enough resources, there isn't enough clean water, there isn't enough food, there aren't enough jobs, there just isn't enough. And then it's inverted here in so many cases. It doesn't mean there aren't people with lack, but you know, I remember this time when I was in Nigeria, maybe when this happened. It might have been about a decade ago. And I remember I was just talking to a young man who was like, I didn't really know him, but maybe like an acquaintance, someone who was just around, and he was like really enthusiastic he was telling me about how he wanted to go to the USA. You know, I was telling him, I live in the UK. He was just really fascinated with the West, and I was like, I really want to go to the USA, da da da. He's really sort of pro-American. I was like, oh, interesting. I was like, you know, what fascinates you so much about America? Like, why are you so sort of hyped up about America? And he said, in America, even the poor people are fat.
Mm.
And it stuck with me.
Yeah.
I was just like, that is quite profound. I don't think it was meant to be profound.
No.
But I was like, that is fascinating. Like for the first time ever in human history, we're actually living in a time where globally, in fact, there are now more people at risk of obesity, having health risks from obesity than from starvation, which is like completely new. Like talk about modern day problems.
Yeah.
Right. So there's just this abundance to the point that now people are putting their health at risk because calories are so abundant and life is so easy that you don't actually need to walk around very much, and you can kind of just sit on your butt all day and make an income and be all right. Even a lot of what people call mental health issues, in many cases, it's not stemming from a lack. It's kind of stemming from so much comfort and so much abundance that people are kind of like, I don't know what to do. Like, I have no purpose. I have no meaning. I don't know what to do. And I don't know. And when I look at the US, I just think the threat is not from outside.
Yeah.
The main threats are not from outside. It is ideological. It's within. It's cultural. It's social. It's not, there's going to be countries launching missiles or something into the US or, doing some sort of land invasion or sea invasion. That's very, very unlikely. But the collapse it's like there are people within this country, citizens who I'd like to think not intentionally are just sort of internally collapsing it. Like you said, through the educational system, through this, through that, through all these different mechanisms. And I'm not American, but it concerns me. And I see elements of the same thing happening in Western Europe, certainly happening in the UK. And it just seems like nations get to a stage of success and prospering and material comfort, and very quickly they lose track of what got them there, and they start to enact policies and shifts in culture and things that are ultimately going to cause it all to collapse and fail if it keeps going in that direction.
Well, it's this Rome story all over again, right? Because some, very, very similar, while history may not repeat itself, sometimes it rhymes. You think about a poor Westerner, a poor American, still lives a better quality of life than most of the royals in Europe from, Queen Victoria or the son,
even from 100 years ago.
Right, exactly. And so you're right. Prosperity is something that humans cannot live with if they do not have a moral code. And this is really something that, look, I didn't grow up that religious. I didn't really understand the value of religion. I remember laying in bed saying, okay, God, if you really exist, prove that you're here. Move that blanket to the side. I'm sure every kid does that. Like, if God, if you really exist, just like flash a light or
Do a
something.
trick.
I really want to it's like, can't he be my celestial butler or something and just show me that he, prove to me that you're really there. And then I remember going through education school. And I remember that in education school, they would say to us, kids don't come with a manual, right? So every kid is different. Kids don't come with a manual. And now I look back and I said, well, actually, I do believe that humans do come with a manual. It's the Old Testament. It's pretty right about a lot of things. Now, whether you believe that the Old Testament was written by God, divinely inspired, or somehow has been an enduring book of human nature that has lasted 3,000 years, whatever it is that you want to believe, how it came to us, how we received it as humans, it is undeniable that it is a manual for human nature.
Mm-hmm.
And it ultimately, what the Old Testament describes to us is what we are living today. And that is, if you have prosperity without a moral code, you will self-destruct. And that is what has happened in the UK. The UK has given away its moral code way faster than the United States of America, right? You see this all over Europe. They've rejected.
It's lost its faith a lot
They've
faster.
created a God-sized hole in their hearts, which gets filled in with all kinds of other nonsense. Humans have a heart. We have a heart. The heart has to be nourished, just like the body needs to be nourished with food. It's an instinct of ours, right? You just had a baby. Immediately the baby lashes on
Not to me.
Not to you, never. To Mommy Gina, to Mommy Gina. And your baby needs nourishment. The human heart needs meaning. It needs a moral code. And when you have prosperity without a moral code, you starve. You starve emotionally. And I think that Europe has been starving emotionally. They've been starving emotionally so much that they've lost morality. And once you have no morality, you don't have a moral code, you think that the Ten Commandments is nonsense and you don't follow them, then you have all of this prosperity and then you self-destruct.
Yeah.
And so first went Europe, and I think America is not far behind on that.
Yeah.
Front.
I think people think that you can just have a vacuum and you can't. They think, okay, if we can just gut out Christianity and have fewer people believing in God and, get rid of anything that's quote unquote superstitious or is not purely material and scientifically provable, then we're going to somehow end up in this like sort of perfect, rational, very peaceful, very abundant, very tolerant society with no more tribalism and no more. I'm just like, no, the opposite is going on.
I mean, the moral code is also a civil agreement between us, right? You need to have a moral, ethical, civil agreement. And so if you give away, like people are like, oh, well, I'm just going to listen to my heart, right? I'm going to listen to my heart and listen to myself.
I'll just be a good person.
I'll just be a good person. I'll be a wonderful person. And I'm going to believe in science. The Nazis believed in science and they believed that they had a good heart.
They did.
Right? Most evil people believe that the evil things that they were doing is not evil.
Yeah.
But they believe that they're doing good things.
Yeah, which is even scarier.
It is very scary because it emboldens them to do absolutely horrific things. And so, the Nazis are a perfect example of that. They were a civilized society and there was beauty and science. And there was complete, no morality, no morality. And it was, again, it's another example where you cannot have a prosperous society without a moral code. And so it ties back to education. Well, when you send your child to a school, what are the expectations? And those are questions that I started asking myself early on in my career. What are we teaching young kids? I saw the 10 Commandments. They used to be in American classrooms, and then they were moved from American classrooms because people misinterpreted separation of church and state versus separation of church from state. So this basically means you have religious liberty. You're not mandated to be a Christian in this Christian country. You can choose your own religion, but it doesn't mean that you cannot have Christianity anywhere in America or any of the government buildings or schools, right? You know, I personally believe there was a purposeful misinterpretation of that. And even though, you know, Christianity was the essence of American DNA, that's what this country was built upon. And so again, you pull the moral code, and frankly the agreement that we had as citizens, or Americans had as citizens with one another. You pull it away, you leave this entire vacuum, and it gets filled up with a lot of bad stuff.
So you worked in the world of education for many years, and then did you go straight from there to PragerU? What's the PragerU story?
Okay, so something very bizarre happened.
Okay.
I was running a school, and then I was working in the nonprofit world. I got a master's in business administration, MBA. Really, the reason I got an MBA was because I knew I had an entrepreneurial spirit. And so my plan was, okay, well, I'm going to get an MBA. I'm going to know education. I'm going to build my own schools. I'm going to have amazing schools that people can come to and send their kids and trust and love and grow with. And upon completion of my MBA, I worked for a local nonprofit here in California that had the idea that, given that I spoke Hebrew and I lived in Israel, that I would get Israeli citizens that live in the United States, like, you know, many other immigrants from around the world. There is a large group of Israelis that live in America, and they benefit hugely from living in this country. And they really do share American values, and they love America, but they're immigrants and they don't know how to give back. And so the concept of that nonprofit was to galvanize these Israelis that were living here and get them to focus on giving back to America as citizens and as parents of American citizens, et cetera.
Giving back in what sense?
Giving back, supporting the community, contributing philanthropically, just supporting in whatever areas that they live in. And the idea of it was that it would go beyond Los Angeles and California. There's a large group of Israelis that live in Los Angeles and in California, but many of them live around the country, and there are Jews that would be associated with the same idea that, you know, you live in America, you give to America, you have to support America. You're living here now. And I like that idea because I felt that way. I felt that way as an American when I lived in Israel, right? I know what it's like to be an immigrant to another country, and I know what it's like to go back and forth. And by the way, it's a bit of a tangent, but I'll use the term, it's a picadillo of mine. If I visit another country that I don't pay taxes in, and I don't live in, and I don't contribute to, I will never do even the littlest thing that disobeys the law.
No.
I will not even cross in a red light, even if there's no car around. I will not step on their grass at a park. I will go properly around. I'm a total geek about it. Some of my team members have traveled with me, and they, you know, now they do it with me because I judge them. And so I just believe that when you are a guest in another country, you better behave. You better behave. Now, in general, I think that you should do not disobey the law, but even more so when you're a guest in another country. And so I've always had that kind of spirit in me of, like, you know, you got to be an honorable human, right? When you look back, what do you get to keep? What do you get to keep in your memory of who you were? And I think those are one of those things. You live in another country, contribute, right? Contribute even more so, right? Like, you're a guest there, support. And so I like that idea, and I started working with them. The organization grew, and it's called the IAC, and it's been almost 15 years now. And so I don't know, they probably do all kinds of other things that I haven't kept track. But while I was working with them, I got a phone call. So I was about 8 months working with them. I got a phone call from one of Dennis Prager's friends. And the phone call was like this: "Hi, Marissa. Do you happen to know somebody with a background of education who kind of knows the digital space and the internet really well and shares Dennis Prager's values and would also be living in Los Angeles and would have some background in nonprofit management?
Mm.
And I'm like, well, Roger, I don't know anybody except me who has those kinds of skills. What is it about?
Mhm.
And so that was when he approached me with this idea of meeting with Dennis Prager, who is a syndicated radio talk show host at that point for over 30 years, a bestseller, has written many books about America, loves America at least as much as I do, maybe even more. But, I think we both just love this country greatly. Dennis Prager and Alan Estrin, who worked with him as producer and came up with this concept of using the internet to share important ideas. The three of us met and they pitched me on this idea. And they said, we know that you're working for this nonprofit group and we know that you really care about America and you're trying to galvanize Israelis to love America and support America while living here. But how about we do what you're talking about with Americans and everybody else?
Mm-hmm.
And, I was curious about what they had to say. And we all agreed that education got us into this mess and education's the way to get us out of this mess. And we need to do something very quick and very efficient. And we have to get the good ideas and the good values out there. And that was about 15 years. About 15 years ago.
Okay.
That we met, started in my kitchen. I bought a laptop. We started fundraising. People believed in our ideas. They supported this vision. It wasn't what it is today, but it was a vision, and a vision where we said, like many entrepreneurs, you kind of don't know what the top of the mountain is going to look like. It's kind of foggy, but you take one step at a time and you feel it in your bones that you're in the right direction, and you just wake up every day knowing that you can be proud of what you've accomplished yesterday, even though you got kicked in the face. You just woke up and went for more. And one step after another, the vision of, again, sharing truth became the mission of PragerU, and that's the story.
Here we are. What's been the hardest part of that over the last 15 years?
The hardest part are the things that became my biggest gifts.
Okay.
Again, there's this recurring theme in my life that I recognize that the hardest things I go through become my biggest gifts. So on the HR level, it was really hard once we had 50 employees. California treats companies with 50 plus employees like the enemy of the state.
Okay. Tell me more.
I wish I didn't have to joke. It's really not funny though. Yeah. I guess one has to laugh about it, but it's very hard.
Okay.
It's very, very hard.
Regulation wise?
Tort law, employment law, all of that stuff. That part was really hard. I had to learn really the hard way of how to hire the right people, keep the right people. You want to do everything you can to keep the most amazing people motivated and just coming back. And then you really need to not have the right people in your, you really need to get rid of the people who shouldn't be around. And that is not an easy thing. It's not easy to even fire people, right? Like you can have people who are truly destructive and don't even share the values of the company. And it's challenging to manage them out just in full transparency. And so now I'm the bad, mean guy because I have to let go of people's friends,
Yeah.
And so, building, Zuby, like, me, I'm not a bad, mean guy. I'm a person with a big heart. I have 3 kids. I have so much love. I have love for God. I have love for the country. I have love for the people that work here. But when you're a CEO, you have to make tough calls and tough decisions. And it took me a long time to learn how to reconcile those things. The judgment that comes with having to be tough. And also as a woman, I people don't like looking at women as tough like that. I think I've settled into the mama bear mode. And so people know that I'm like that tough mom who will smack you with a sandal if I need to. I learned that from my Indian friends.
Yeah.
But that was something very tough for me to learn. But as you'd imagine, like now I say what a gift it was that I learned how to do these things, that I have that discernment of how to pick the right people, and how to have the courage to not keep the wrong people, to let go of the people who shouldn't be around because it hurts everybody. So that was something very hard for me. People sometimes ask me whether it's hard, the name calling and the silliness that people make up about me. Surprisingly, it doesn't bother me so much. I mostly think it's silly. They call me a white Christian nationalist Barbie. And so I just keep the Barbie piece because I think it means maybe I'm cute. Some conspiracy theorists, bizarre people call me a Mossad agent because I'm a Jew and I lived in Israel and I served in the Israeli military. Last time I watched TV, I heard that I gleaned that generally Mossad agents are covert and not so outspoken about their backgrounds. And I'm the most transparent person I think you probably know. I run a nonprofit, so I don't have a lot of transparency. I mean, I don't have a lot of secrecy. I have to have a lot of transparency. The books are open for auditors and donors and everybody. And so, silly accusations that can get scary sometimes too. It's, there are death threats and, things like that I receive on Instagram. And, those things are not fun. Certainly not pleasant. Silly name calling. I've learned to get over.
Yeah. No, there's some weird people out there. I want to shift direction a little bit. You've talked a little bit about marriage and being a mom of 3, family life. Let's talk a little bit more about that. How did you meet your husband? Before we started rolling the cameras, you told me a bit of a story. So I want to get it on the pod.
I walked up to my husband, who was not my husband at the time. I just thought he was a good-looking guy. I knew he'd be my husband, though. It's amazing. I just figured it out. I walked up to him and I asked for a bite of his donut. And he looked back at me and then he looked at the table and said, there are a bunch of donuts there.
Where were you? Was this at a party?
It was like a party. Okay. Yeah. And I was like, no, I want a bite of that donut. I was like, okay, you get it now? You get it? He's like, okay, I get it. And so that's how we met. I don't know how lengthy of a story you want. There's actually a lesson there for women in our dating life. We dated for a while. I knew that I was going to marry Noah right away. I knew what I was looking for. I dated a lot. Zuby, I dated a lot before I met Noah. I had a roommate who used to say to me that I probably don't know the cost of food because I would date for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I, of course, did not pay on first or second dates. It's an absolutely important lifelong rule that should be in the Old Testament. I'm sure it's somehow there, but I couldn't find it yet. I'm still searching. But when I met Noah, I knew.
How did you know?
We share the same values.
Did you already know him to some degree, or was he? Okay.
I did know him because we met many years prior on a double date where I was with a guy and he was with a different woman.
Oh, interesting.
But even then, I said to myself, that guy is a better match for me than this guy. Yeah, I totally remember it. Yeah. And so then we were both single, and that's where the donut came up, right? And so, I knew, but he didn't know. And we dated, and we had a really, really good dating relationship. We shared the same values. We enjoyed the same things. Like, how many Angelinos would I meet that are, I thought he was sophisticated. He knew about history. We would listen to classical music. I'm like, who does that, right? I'm a millennial. Like, who listens to classical music? A few. We really enjoyed each other. We enjoyed traveling. He was well-traveled. I was well-traveled. We went to Cambodia. We went to Thailand. Like, we really enjoyed doing the same things. We shared the same values. We had a similar vision for life, except for the fact that I was ready to get married and he was indecisive.
Hey,
and so here we go. And so I don't think I've ever shared this publicly. Oh my God, I'm doing what you're doing. So he couldn't make a decision on whether he was ready to get married. And was pretty blunt, and I brought it up and I said, look, it's been almost a year or so that we're together. And, I'd like to know that we're making progress. Maybe we move in together if you're not ready to get married. But I really think that, making some progress. At that point, I was, I think, 28 years old, if I make the right calculation. And he just couldn't make a decision. And he didn't say no, but he didn't say yes.
Yeah.
He just didn't say anything. It was that, like, everybody listening to this knows exactly where the man was and where the woman was in this situation. Except that I am a professional troublemaker, and I was born a professional troublemaker. And so this is what a professional troublemaker does when she dates a man who can't decide what he wants to do. She loves him, but she remembers that she needs to love herself first, because she's going to have to live with herself for the rest of her life, and he may not. And so I said to myself this. I said, I love Noah, but I love me, and I'm going to have to take care of me. And I don't like the way I am feeling dating a man who can't decide whether he wants to marry me or not. And I thought about it hard and overnight. And the following day, I went to him, I met with him, and I said, look, I'm not going to pressure you. I'm not going to wait around. If we keep doing this and we keep dating, and I keep wondering every day if I should get my nails done so that maybe you're going to put a ring on my finger, and you every day go into it feeling pressured, she's pressuring me, we're going to get nowhere. Yeah. It's going to be a bad spiral. So I'm going to leave you. And should you decide that I'm the right fit for you, and I happen to still be single, because as of tomorrow, I will begin dating again. Should you decide that you would like to propose to me, the door is open, but I don't know for how long. And I went home. I cried that whole night. Just to give you a visual, the visual is very important. I had a little Maltese puppy dog, and I held onto my little coconut Maltese puppy dog. And I said to myself, Marissa, tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up and you're going to put both feet down on the ground floor at the same time. And you're going to lift yourself up with the chin up, and you're going to move on, and you're going to start dating again, and you're not going to cry another tear. It's the power of the mind that I developed when I was a little child, of being able to really, really control my mind and my emotions when I knew that I needed to do it, when I knew I needed to control myself so that I can better my life. And I did that. I moved on, and I started dating and whatever. And then he came back, and I was like, look, hello, but not until there is a commitment. And
How long was that? Yeah.
3 months.
Okay.
About 3 months. And I did start dating, again. And that's it. I think it recentered our entire relationship, by the way, because I do believe, much contrary to what universities will teach women, that men and women are different. And I believed in it always, even though I didn't quite know how to put the words to it until I experienced it and grew up a little bit. I believe that men and women are different, and a man needs to be a pursuer, and a woman needs to be pursued. And while we can crack open the door and ask for that bite of the jelly donut, or slide into somebody's DM, or give the signal at the bar that we're interested, ultimately, I do believe that if the man doesn't have a chance to pursue, that there is something about the relationship that doesn't work very well. If the woman is constantly the aggressor, saying, let's get married, let's get married, let's get married, let's get married, and the man doesn't want to, he doesn't get to do what he needs to do to feel that he has caught her.
Yes.
And she feels insecure because she doesn't feel that he pursues and then later does that secondary role of protect.
Yep.
And so I think that we have different roles in relationships. And when we can't reset them, like, there are ways to reset them, but we have to be conscientious about how different we are. And so from that moment on, my husband and I have been married now 15 years,
Awesome.
14 years. And it's just, we know our roles.
That's a funny story. You were telling me off camera, but a little bit, I was just on your podcast. And you were telling me that you spend a lot of time thinking and talking about everything that's going on in the dating and mating world of men and women in modern society. And it's something that fascinates you quite a lot. Well, number one, why is that?
So am I allowed to be totally honest about what I think
Please.
feminism has done to the West and possibly now the world?
Please.
So, I think that maybe feminism started with a good intention. I certainly believe in equality, right? I'm a CEO female CEO of a large company. I have 180 employees, and I want to be treated equally. I think there's a huge difference between equality and equity. Feminism has gone so far by basically saying to women, in order for you to actually be equal, you have to be the same as a man, and you therefore have to behave like a man, and you have to have the same senses, sensibilities, and desires as a man. And I think it's a real problem because I believe that God has made women to be women. And we play a very, very significant role in society. And women that don't play the significant role, the role that we're made to play in our society, can be incredibly destructive. I actually believe that women can destroy our society if they don't understand the power that we have as women and the responsibility that we're given. The biggest responsibility in the world is to create a human and to raise a human. Women do that. Women mostly are the ones who raise children. But look what we're seeing across the board in the West. Who are the people who are pushing children to transition? Who are generally, if you take a male and a female parent, and if you're really being honest about it, is it usually the mom or is it usually the dad
Mom by far.
who pushes the child to be a transvestite? By far, it is almost never the dad.
Yeah.
It was never the dad.
No.
It's the mom. What is the role of a woman to protect a child? But we are so desensitized to our role that we actually become destructive. Another perfect example is women are not biologically made to want to sleep with as many men as possible. It is not in our interest. I don't really care how many people are going to tell you that they love accumulating a body count. Like you go on TikTok and you watch all these videos of young girls. I watched a video of a 21-year-old who was saying that she's so proud of herself for sleeping with 47 men that month alone. You cannot tell me that this is normal behavior for a woman.
No.
It is not. It is incredibly destructive. It is horrible for her. It is horrible for her, for society, for everybody around her. And so I think that women have been so confused by feminism because they're told to behave like men, that they're actually destroying their own lives, but they're not just destroying their own lives, they're hurting our society. And an example of what a woman's role should be in society is to really force the men to remember that they need a home and that we as women are your home. There's this amazing Talmudic, which is a Jewish teaching story about a rabbi who insisted that whenever anybody asked him about his wife, he said, "Do not call my wife just my wife. We need to call her my wife, my home. And without her, I don't have stability. She is my house. No matter where I go, I have her and she gives me a house because she provides me with stability." Male's nature is to run, to hunt, to protect, to be men, frankly, to be masculine men. Women's nature is to build a home, to build our home and to create that structure for you to come home to. But if we don't understand these roles, then you have men who don't have the desire or the place to call home, or the responsibility, the understanding that you have a responsibility to protect a home. And women don't have their important role of raising children. And so this has led to all of these modern problems that we're having. Young women with an incredible amount of mental health problems, young men with an incredible amount of mental health problems. We're below replacement rates in most Western societies where feminism has been taught to in colleges and universities and frankly even grade school, right? These all originate from this idea that men and women are completely the same, which we're not.
Millions of abortions.
Millions of abortions.
Million a year in the USA alone.
You know what women are told? They're told, well, no, go freeze your eggs. We'll pay for it. Corporate America will pay to freeze your eggs. Go grab your briefcase and go to work.
Yeah.
Like, really? You don't want a baby in your arms? You want a briefcase in your arms? No, that's not a female nature. That is not human nature. It is not the nature of what will allow us to survive. It's maladaptive,
Yes.
right?
Something that's really weird in the West I've noticed is I call it the obsession with exceptions. And that is trying to cater to the exceptions to the detriment of the norm.
Yes, the tyranny of the minority.
The detriment of the majority. So in these type of conversations, someone will say, oh, well, there are some women who don't want to have kids and don't want to get married and, they really are just girl bosses. And so I'm like, sure, but it's less than 10%. Right. So if you build society to predominantly cater to this exception, sure, that exists, then there are ramifications for the norm, for all of the people who would want to pursue a normal path in line generally with the nature of a human in general or of their sex specifically. Now it's much, much harder for them. So I think it's interesting how there are a lot of sort of oxymorons or hypocrisies that I see in the multi-decade feminist movement. So, for example, I think if anyone downplays and disregards the function that women have had all across societies, cultures, and nations, all throughout human history, it's feminists, because they always measure against male accomplishments and achievements, right? So everything you were saying about women doing, like, literally bringing life into the world, creating a home, nurturing, raising children, all of that, like, that is so incredibly important and always has been.
And we're told, no, that is nothing. Don't worry. No, you should. Yeah.
So even when people talk about, like, the whole, like, wage gap thing, or why do men making more money and so on, obviously men are working more hours, doing different jobs, so on, taking more risks, traveling more, but also it's like, why is that even the measure? Women control more spending in the USA than men do. Men earn more overall, but women spend more and have access to more cash. So who's decided, like, who even decided that, like, a salary or an income is, like, this is the bar, this is the measure of how successful and worthy you are? Like, no, that's who even picked that thing? And why is the measure? Why is the thing? It's not even like measuring against men. It's like measuring against, like, type A hyper ambitious men.
Well, you talk about the tyranny of the minority. People don't realize that is extremist thinking, right? Because you're taking the minority case and then you're making that the majority case. That is extremist thinking. And where has this extremist thinking brought us to? This idea that a very, very small percentage of humans, generally below the age of 3 or 4, identify with gender dysphoria. Okay, that is very, 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 very it's just a sliver of the population. But now this tyranny of minority thinking, this extremist thinking, has led parents to push the idea of gender identity and gender transforming care, right, on children all through their prepubescent years when they're questioning everything about the world, right? This extremist thinking is so destructive. Now they're saying, oh, we're just being tolerant. No, you're not being tolerant. You're being extremist. You're taking a minority issue and you're applying it across the board to everybody. There is such a thing as humanity and human nature, right? And to not recognize that and to just harp over the anomalies or the aberrations or the very small minority cases within our society is maladaptive. This is what it leads to. It becomes maladaptive. And by the way, feminism hasn't only hurt women in that, really, they're freezing their eggs, they're sleeping around, they're not having families, all these things that truly bring us so much joy. Look, I run a big company. I have a nice salary. I get to say that I'm CEO, whatever. The most important the most significant thing I've done in my entire life is to get married and have 3 children.
Yeah.
It is mine for me to keep forever, right? It is my legacy.
Yes.
There's nothing more important than that. But it's not just that women are getting hurt. It's not that just children are getting hurt, because you have women who are just, again, it's just they've lost their sensitivity to what our role is in our society. But men are getting hurt by it too.
Everybody, children.
Right? Like, men now don't know how to date. They don't know how to approach a woman because the woman, the feminist woman, has signaled every confusing signal to the man to make it impossible for him to approach her.
Yeah.
Right? So if he gives her a compliment and he says her legs look really pretty, she's offended. And then she Title IXs him if she's in college. Right? That's it. He lost his career. He's kicked out of college. Are you kidding me? Like, all day long, I'll take a compliment. If you want to tell me that I have cute legs, call me a Christian nationalist Barbie, whatever it is, like, thank you, right? Women love compliments. Now men can't give women compliments, even though we love getting compliments.
And it has political ramifications too, because that mothering energy, it goes somewhere. And oftentimes, it will go to whichever group is perceived to be marginalized, whether that is illegal immigrants or that is people from here or it's criminals or wherever. It'll either go there or it'll go into cats and dogs.
Right. All the social justice causes.
Yeah, it goes into that. To me, that's like a massive, like, it's very clearly a misdirection of maternal instinct and energy.
I mean, just think about this. I'm the most pro-woman person probably who's ever been on your podcast. I'm reminding everybody that our society needs us to actually be real women.
Yeah.
That's my point. My point is that I'm not anti-women. My point is that I'm pro-women. I'm pro-woman in the way that we are made as women to be appreciated for the very unique role that we can bring to this world, to build a home for you, to hold you accountable, to raise a child with you, to encourage you to raise children, to bring the femininity into our society, to protect a child against whether it's chemical castration or open borders or whatever it is that our societies are doing. I'm the most pro woman in the real woman sense, not in the sense that feminism says that if you're pro woman, you should convince a woman that she should be a man.
Yes. Yeah. I have very strong feelings on that subject. It's a crazy one. I am curious, how do you balance being a CEO, running PragerU, and being a wife and mom of 3? Because that's obviously, in some ways, it seems to be, at least on paper, pulling in different directions. So how do you practically go about managing that?
So I think, like everything any entrepreneur would say, is you need to understand your priorities.
Yeah.
And you need to focus on your priorities. And when you know what you want to accomplish, you suddenly have more hours in the day because you're more organized about it. You're intentional about it. My priority is my family and my children. Absolutely. Around that, I've gotten really good help, people who support me. And the things that I do with my kids are very significant. I'm very intentional about it. I have real conversations with them. I bring them with me. They travel with me. I brought my son, went to Hungary when I interviewed Viktor Orban. My son got to learn a little bit about the world now that they're getting older. I involve my kids. My kids QC some of our content. They do the quality control on some of our content. And so we get to do a lot of these things together. I think that, like many entrepreneurs, I don't have a very clear line between what is work and what is family and what is family and what is work. And so sometimes these things bleed into each other. But I love my work. And so I'm not resentful of it. And more than anything, I love my kids. And so I'm happy when I can bring them into this world of mine where it's like, really, it's the American way, apprenticeship. And so they may not take over this place, but to have a child watch parents at work is better than any education they can get. They're really, really learning what it's like to be an entrepreneur and a CEO, et cetera. And so there's a blend of that. And I would say finally, the way I manage doing it is I try to make sure that every hour of my day is something that is worth doing.
Yeah.
intentionality.
Awesome. Marissa, what's next for you and what's next for PragerU?
What's next for me is to try to make sure that all the amazing single men and women that I know find each other and have lots of children.
Matchmaker.
And that we ultimately build an enterprise that leaves this country at the very, and maybe even the world at the very least, not worse than how we found it. And that might ebb and flow, right? It might be another show, another program, a partnership with other countries. It might be building additional curriculum and those kinds of things. But ultimately the vision is to share truth and to remain humble and serve God, and to make sure that whatever it is that we do, with whatever blessings we have and resources we have, we just do the right thing. I think that sometimes people get really big companies and they get confused about what the right thing is. And so I just pray to God every day that I'm just doing good. And so that's what's for me, and for my future. Ultimately, it's the same thing, to do good by the people that I love and that I care about, and to squeeze every goodness out of every single day that I still get to live on this earth.
Amen. Well, thank you for your work, and thank you for the gift of your time. It's been such a pleasure talking to you as always.
As always, thank you.